Dude, we should start working on our socials project.
But I don't want to.
Well, we have to. So where do we start?
I think it was supposed to be about the Red River. Something.
Rebellion.
Yes, rebellion.
Okay, so I think the first thing was when the surveyors showed up at Red River.
Yeah. And it was a problem because the surveyors didn't think that the Métis owned their property, so they divided up land that already belonged to people.
Yeah, and then Louis Riel came back from wherever he was and realized that his people were in trouble, and then he did something about it.
Yeah, and everyone listened to him and he became the leader.
Then what happened?
Then the Canadian government bought Rupert's land from the HBC.
They bought a giant chunk of land.
Yes, I think you could do that back then.
Why did the HBC sell it?
Not sure. I think 'cause they wanted to branch out.
Then Louis Riel set up a provisional government at Red River and they wrote a list of rights.
Yeah, and it was about them wanting to be able to elect their own representatives and own their own land.
And after that, I think that's when they executed Thomas Scott.
Oh my God. They killed him.
Yeah. That's what they did back then when you threatened to kill people.
Then in 1870 Manitoba became a province. Then the Wolseley expedition happened when the Canadian troops showed up and tried to lynch Riel.
Yeah. And then Louis Riel was forced to run away to the States, because the Canadian government banished him for 5 years.
Wow, 5 whole years.
Yeah. But he actually stayed there for 15 years and became a school teacher in Montana.
What about the other members of the provisional government? Did they have to run away too?
No, they were all granted amnesty except for Riel.
That doesn't make any sense. Oh well. Then in late 1870 the Métis had to flee the west.
How come?
Because the troops that were supposed to be keeping the peace were beating up the Métis and sometimes they even killed them.
Oh my God.
Then in 1871 the first 2 native treaties were passed.
What exactly were those about?
They were decisions about how much land the First Nations people would get. They wanted to keep 60% of their land, but they only got 160 acres for every family of 5.
That's really stupid. Why would they even do that?
No idea.
And in 1873 the Northwest Mounted Police were created. And they were sent to the Northwest to keep the peace and get rid of the whiskey traders.
Yeah. And then the Pacific scandal happened and MacDonald got kicked out of office.
What was the scandal about?
MacDonald bribed the president of the CPR for money for his election campaign.
No wonder they kicked him out. And then Alexander Mackenzie became Prime Minister.
Yeah, and he was totally against the CPR and saw it as a lot of trouble. And there was no railroad construction while he was in office.
Yeah, and in 1874 they signed the next 2 native treaties.
Then in 1875 Gabriel Dumont led the hunt of 1875 and broke the Métis hunting laws and was arrested.
Yeah, and then MacDonald introduced the national policy, which was mostly about the CPR and settlement in the West and trade tariffs to protect the Canadian market.
And then the Indian Act was passed, and it said that all the First Nations people had to live on reservations and that their kids would be sent to residential schools.
That's really mean. I don't know why someone would do stuff like that.
Then in 1881 William Van Horn was put in charge of the CPR construction.
Aha! And lots of work got done while he was in charge.
Then when Riel returned in 1884 the government thought he was planning another rebellion. But he wasn't.
Then in the summer the provisional government signed the Métis Bill of Rights.
Yeah, then in 1885 the battles of Duck Lake and Batoche happened.
Then in July Riel was put on trial and convicted of treason. And then in November he was hanged.
Why did they kill him?
Back then that was the punishment for treason. But yeah, I know it doesn't seem like treason to me either.
Well, I guess we were done.
Thank gosh.